welcome. For all of you who are tuned in, you're watching TMH as we present you our daily English news. Our headlines for today: Eritrean forces took up offensive positions on additional 4 fronts in the northern and eastern Tigray as well as Afar regions. The UN Security Council called upon to take action to ensure the protection of civilians and prevent an escalation of ongoing war in the Ethiopian region. And R2P says the Ethiopian government has failed to protect all populations in Ethiopia regardless of ethnicity. Eritrean forces are taking up offensive positions on additional 4 fronts in the northern and eastern Tigray region as well as Afar. Member of Tigray Central Command, Getachew Reda, wrote on his official Twitter account that the Eritrean forces are taking up offensive positions in Ramma, Arona, Zalambesa, and Dalol front. He also said Eritrean forces have been shelling the outskirts of Adigrat the entire day today. Tigray forces have 4 to 2 weeks now been fighting Eritrean forces and Abiy Ahmed's forces in the Western Front. Horn of Africa analyst Rashid Abdi also tweeted that the aim of the offensive by the combined Ethiopian and Eritrean forces is to push into Ma'ala, definitely an ambitious invasion plan. This is now war on the ground scale, he says, as he wrote on his Twitter account, adding that the concerted international action against Eritrea is extremely urgent. Scholar says Eritrea's Isaias Afwerki has been exercising a veto over any possibility of resolving the ongoing war on Tigray. Alex DeWall, who's the executive director of the World Peace Foundation at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, made this remark in an interview with Tigray TV's Ma'ala Foresight. According to DeWall, the destruction of Tigray is, for Isaias, an existential issue, and his recent offensive on the Shararo-Badme front portended the final attempt to finally crush Tigray region. Let's take a listen.
Now, should he prevail, not only will he crush Tigray, but he will become the dominant factor, the key ruler, if you like, in the whole of the Horn of Africa. Not only will Ethiopia be under his heel, but he will be able to determine outcomes in Somalia and in Sudan. At least, at the very minimum, he will be able to veto attempts at peace and stability in those countries.
He added that the international community does not seem to realize this fact as to whether the atrocities committed in Tigray should be cataloged as a genocide. Alex DeWall had this to say.
If there's any case in the contemporary world where the term genocide is applicable, it would be Tigray. I think that if the State Department investigation into what was happening in Tigray, the report was completed 13 months ago. If that were to be unveiled, I think we would probably see the conclusion of the investigation is that there is a case to answer. As you say, the acts constitutive of genocide have been committed, and the intent is there, at least among some of the key perpetrators.
DeWall added and cautioned against fetishizing the word genocide and advised not to forget that the equally heinous and internationally prosecutable war and the war crimes committed against humanity.
If we fetishize the term genocide, we may end up misleading ourselves. There is no international obligation in law to intervene to stop genocide. There is an obligation to prevent it and to punish it, which has very occasionally been done. But genocide is not, in international law, is not worse than crimes against humanity. The two are co-equal as the most terrible crimes on the book. So, if you ask me, yes, I do think it is genocide. I do warn that talking about genocide as though somehow getting an acceptance of genocide in the international community would make a huge difference. I don't think it will make a huge difference, sadly.
Alex DeWall noted that the calls by the international community for stopping the fighting, leaving Isaias and Abiy Ahmed intact, is key to the Tigray leadership. He argued that there is no easy solution to the ongoing war on Tigray without credible international peace process based on correct analysis of the role of Eritrea in fermenting the regional disaster. The International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia calls upon the UN Security Council to take action to ensure protection of civilians and prevent any further escalation of this ongoing war within Ethiopia. A statement attributable to the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia expressed its deep concern about the renewal of hostilities between the government of Ethiopia and the Tigrayan forces. The statement added Eritrean troops are also engaged in hostilities, and the conflict risks spreading to other states. The Commission reiterated its call to all parties immediately to cease hostilities, respect their obligations under international humanitarian law, and to return to the process of dialogue. In the light of the threat to peace and security within the region, the Commission welcomed the decisions of the UN Security Council to discuss the situation in Ethiopia as a matter of urgency. It further called upon the Council to take action under the Charter needed to ensure the protection of civilians and prevent escalation that could further destabilize and hinder the region. The Commission urges the Council to keep the situation in Ethiopia and the entire Horn high on its agenda, given the gravity of the current situation. R2P says Ethiopia and the government has failed to protect all of its population in Ethiopia regardless of ethnicity. The Global Center for Responsibility to Protect made the remark in a statement. Timnit Bayru has further details.
According to the Global Center for Responsibility to Protect, a leading non-governmental organization advocating for the implementation of R2P in the world, the Ethiopian government has failed to uphold its responsibility to protect all populations in Ethiopia, regardless of ethnicity. R2P has also indicated that the Amhara forces have been implicated in acts of ethnic cleansing. Civilians in Tigray, Afar, and Amhara remain at risk of further atrocities due to repeated violations of international humanitarian law and international human rights. Inflammatory statements by regional and federal government leaders, including Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, may fuel further ethnic conflict, it warned. It called upon all parties to the conflict in northern Ethiopia to operate in strict adherence with international humanitarian law and ensure the protection of civilians and refugees. It urged all parties to the conflict to agree to an immediate full-scale ceasefire with no preconditions and allow unfettered delivery of emergency aid, including fuel and medical supplies. It called on the international community to support efforts to negotiate a ceasefire. It also called on the UN Security Council to impose an arms embargo and sanctions on those prolonging the conflict and committing atrocities. Eritrean forces should immediately withdraw from Ethiopia, R2P stated. R2P called on all parties to the conflict to cooperate with the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia and allow it to carry out its mandate. UN member states should support the renewal of the Commission's mandate at the upcoming 51st session of the Human Rights Council and fully fund the Commission's work. The Ethiopian government must allow the ICHREE unfettered access to all conflict areas, it said. The Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect is leading the non-governmental organization advocating for the implementation of R2P in the world.
Thank you, Timnit. Continuing to our daily news, our next update, Sudan and South Sudan are backing regional efforts to end conflict within Ethiopia. Sudan and South Sudan have intensified regional efforts to end the conflict in Ethiopia, citing its significant role in regional peace and stability. Speaking to Sudan Tribune on Tuesday, South Sudan Security Affairs Advisor Tutgaluk Manimi said President Salva Kiir and his Sudanese counterpart General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan vowed to support all efforts to end the conflict. The two leaders also acknowledged that Ethiopia's role in the fight against terrorism. The presidential aide Manimi said, His Excellency, the President of the Republic and General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan are concerned about peace and stability in the region, and they have agreed to step up and support regional and continental efforts to end the conflict in Ethiopia. He also revealed that the hybrid efforts by the Intergovernmental Authority on Development through the Office of its Special Envoy and the Secretariat are being exerted to resolve the conflict peacefully, as well as ensuring a sustained provisions of humanitarian aid and facilitating the resumption of basic services. These efforts, he added, seek to push for a ceasefire deal between the warring factions and the expedited process, according to Minimi. Kenya, Sudan, and South Sudan have been asked by the Friends of Ethiopia to deliberate upon and adopt a peaceful proposal that could lead to the conclusion of a ceasefire and lay the foundation for future political dialogue. There are efforts, joint efforts of the AU and the IGAD, all suggesting Kenya and Sudan and South Sudan work together on a proposal to end the conflict within Ethiopia, he stressed. Security experts and journalists are keen to underscore the conflict and instability trends in the Horn of Africa region and continue to make it one of the most unstable regions in the world. Significant portions of the Horn of Africa have not been able to break free of the lethal cocktail of armed conflict, violent crimes, extremism, communal violence, political instability, and even state failure that has plagued the region for decades. Most parts of the Horn of Africa of armed conflict and instability are concentrated near the border areas, posing spillover risks and featuring powerful cross-border drivers, interests, as well as actors. CSO, despite a ban of meeting press, are calling for immediate peace in Ethiopia and basic services provisions in Tigray and other conflict-hit areas as well. After being blocked by security forces from meeting the media, a group of 35 local civil society organizations issued a joint statement calling for peace within Ethiopia, where the resumption of militarized hostilities between the federal army and Tigrayan forces reversed a 5-month lull in fighting following a unilateral humanitarian truce, which was declared in March of this year. In addition to the ongoing war in parts of Tigray, Afar, and the Amhara regions, another war is ongoing involving the federal and the Oromia regional state forces and the Oromo Liberation Army, also known as OLA. The group of 35 local CSOs came together to meet at the Intercontinental Hotel in Addis Ababa on the 6th of August to conduct a joint press conference calling for the need for urgent peace within Ethiopia. But they were prevented from holding this meeting by security personnel wearing civilian and police uniforms who informed organizers they were from the government. The invited media representatives were also turned back by security forces. This type of practices is not only against the rule of law, but also denies the rule that the civil society organizations should play for peace, the group said in an inexplicable ban. The event was then held online, according to media reports, and the consensus statement by the group calling for peace was later published. According to the statement, during the war that erupted in Tigray region on November 2020 and later on expanded to neighboring regions of Amhara and Afar, many innocent citizens were subjected to extrajudicial killings and women sustained horrific sexual violence. Many others fled the wars and were forced to stay in various displacement camps and are facing terrible humanitarian crisis. The statement added that the Ethiopians who were physically injured in the war, whose properties were destroyed, and whose families were scattered, have not recovered from their injuries until today. Civilians in Tigray region are subjected to severe suffering, abuse to the interruption of basic services, and humanitarian aid due to this prolonged war and conflict. Apart from the war in the north, conflicts are taking place in western and southern Oromia, Benshangul Gumuz, and some other areas of the southern nations and nationalities and peoples region, where causes of extrajudicial killings and injuring of many civilians and citizens are taking place. Women are subjected to rape and other horrible abuses. Countless Ethiopians are displaced from their villages due to the conflicts. These wars have deprived Ethiopians of their basic rights to life, to physical security, to property rights, and to the right of movement, and have even threatened the country's existence in whole, as the group mentioned. If these conflicts are not resolved peacefully, the country will enter into a crisis from which it will not be able to get out, And the CSOs also warned, adding that the war in Tigray, the Amhara, and Afar region are ongoing conflicts, and other areas should be stopped immediately, and honest, peaceful reconciliation talks involving all parties should take place and should get started immediately. The group also called for the restoration of economic and social services and have been interrupted in the areas for aid to be delivered without any hindrance. It said investigations and accountability measures should also be taken against those who have committed gender-based sexual violence and other human rights violations, and women and children who are victims as well. Other sections of society who are bearing the brunt of these wars should be provided with immediate medical and social psychological support, and that the innocent victims who are not involved in the conflict should be protected under all and any circumstances. Our final update for today, the Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs demands all diplomatic and consular missions in Addis Ababa to provide advance information in writing on gatherings on their premises. This notice by the ministry has created concern in all diplomatic missions accredited to Ethiopia. The ministry said it requires all diplomatic and consular missions in the capital to provide advance information in writing to their respective directorate generals of the ministry whenever they organize gatherings on the groups and the grounds of official premises or other locations. The ministry has demanded sufficient information in terms of number of participants, as well as the occasions of functions and the beginning and the end of each and every event that they plan. That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.